Is the picture okay? Straight, I mean. Okay. Hi, you guys. Sorry I'm a minute late. I'm getting used to the new time because, in Arizona, they haven't discovered daylight saving time. So that means, with respect to most of the rest of the country, we change twice a year. So now it's 4:30 instead of 5:30 my time. But anyway, that's the only excuse I could think of. This is Lost Arts Radio Live, and it's a show that we do once a week just for an hour, which is not very long, to look at news events, but it's not supposed to be any kind of comprehensive coverage. It's just what were some of the significant events during the week that's just ending, and what do they mean? And when I put the show title up for this month or this week, um, when I said Darkness Strikes, I was really feeling that way about the events at the two mosques in New Zealand in Christchurch, where murderer just went in there. I'm not going to say gunman because the weapon doesn't matter. It's all the people killed and injured, and he killed like 49 people at least, and 48 in the hospital. I don't know if they'll all live or not, but definitely a good application of prayers and good wishes to all the people that were involved in that horrible thing. And that's a pretty dark act as far as I can tell. It's a man that was not very old. He was, in his 30s, I guess. And he prepared for this murder in an extraordinarily thorough manner. He wrote what's called a manifesto, notably the same word that they used to call the work by Marx and Engels, the Communist Manifesto, to show the world, that he figured it would be picked up afterwards, what he did it for and why. And it's still unclear to me anyway whether he had help, and if so, how much. And it's just some interesting coincidences around this particular shooting, because Facebook had been down, which is really unusual, for, I don't know, 14 or more hours right before. And then right when it came back on, he did this and live streamed the whole thing, apparently, including the car ride up to the mosques where he killed the people. And the manifesto was written in a way that would set the stage for what he said he hoped would be a race war. Really unusual kind of deal. But since he happened to have light skin, the media is really jumping on and saying, white person, white man. It's even worse. He's a male, right? A white man shot all these poor innocent people, and they were poor innocent people. That was horrible. But the fact that he's a white man is, pretty irrelevant. When it's anything other than a white man, they just don't mention who it is and say just some, unknown person did this and just went crazy. But since it's a white man, they're really jumping on it, and they're trying to make it so it was inspired by the president of the United States, which appears to be complete nonsense. But that's the specialty of the media, complete nonsense as they operate now. Somehow he showed up there with automatic weapons in a country where the gun laws are really tight, illustrating again that the gun laws don't stop anything. As far as the criminals go, they stop people from having the means of self-defense, but they don't stop this kind of event. And if you really make the guns impossible to get, if you can manage that, then they just run over crowds with cars and stuff. And it's crazy to try to make the general people defenseless and think that that's going to stop these maniacs, and it doesn't at all. And not only did he have automatic weapons in a country where they're completely illegal, but apparently he had bombs and grenades in the car, or maybe with him, just in case, he needed more firepower. And he was eventually chased by one man with a legal gun, very unusual in New Zealand. I think it had to be a single shotgun or something like that. And he wasn't shot by the police. He was arrested, which apparently is what he expected. And he said he expected to be let out of prison much later on when he was vindicated by events that would happen in the world. But this was obviously a really sick person. He'd just walk up and people were screaming and he'd just shoot him at point blank range. And he recorded and live streamed the whole thing on Facebook. So I don't know what the media is going to do with that. Facebook shouldn't be blamed for it. It's not their fault at all. The open media is very important to have available, and to have the live streaming available as well for real news coverage like that. Anyway, he live streamed the whole thing from advance, and it came out right when Facebook came online. So he had maximum possible audience. And the 74-page manifesto that he wrote was really carefully crafted to lay the groundwork for the race war and the Civil War, which he said were his objectives, but also hoped that there would be complete disintegration of the United States, which he considered very evil, and that maybe that disintegration and Civil War would stop the United States from going out and attacking countries around the world. And actually, I would agree that the U.S. should not be occupying and invading all these countries around the world. Obviously, it's illegal, immoral, and everything. But he was hoping that the people that he chose, which were people praying in a mosque, would open up religious wars and race wars and all kinds of things, especially in the U.S., which was his apparent main target from what the manifesto was talking about. But in any case, the most likely results of this, which are actually already starting in New Zealand, are even tighter gun laws, which is totally insane, because if people had been armed in the mosque where the killer came in, he would have been stopped immediately by one of the Muslims who was praying there. And that would have been normal. The fact that they were all disarmed in New Zealand speaks very poorly of that aspect of government there, just like it does in other parts of the world. Tighter gun laws now in New Zealand, where you can't even get single-shot guns with big license procedures to go through and everything. It will just hurt the situation, not help it. And Civil War potential in response is great, because the media is going to jump on that and rev up race tensions by emphasizing the race of the shooter, which is not something to talk about ever, and they only do it if it's in line with their current program of racism against whites and genderism against males, and that'll fit in perfectly. The whole shooting scenario, which very possibly could have been backed, and that's how he could have walked in there with that kind of weapons. It's perfect for the global ruler's actually the problem reaction solution model, where you have the shooting, and then the power structure says, see, it's because all these evil guns are accessible, and all you have to do is disarm all the honest people that aren't breaking the laws, and everything's going to be great. And it's completely insane. What the objective is in the problem reaction solution in this case is social chaos that gets to the point where people are just begging for control by fascism and world government and things like that. And they're already saying on the major news that the murderer was a supporter of the U.S. president and a conservative and a constitutional. None of that's true. It's just made up as lies by the media. he said that his ideal government that he really admired a lot was communist China, and that he was not a conservative. But they know most people won't read the whole manifesto. It's hard to find. And they'll just believe whatever the news says, which will be completely false as usual. So with all the Facebook timing and all that, it's a strong possibility that he was supported. Also, that he's most likely on drugs or some kind of mind control, as is usually the case with these guys. And according to the manifesto, he really didn't hate the innocent people that he killed. It was just all designed for what he thought would most efficiently create civil war, especially in the U.S., but hopefully other places in the world too. And weakening the U.S. was his main objective. So I've got way more to go through here than I have time for, as usual. But I guess I already mentioned that the media will be quick to use it to eliminate more gun rights in places where they still exist, and to eliminate free speech and criticism of the particular religion of the people who are praying in the mosque there. And, they figure that we're all so superficial thinking, so conditioned by the media, so ruined by the educational system, that we're going to fall into hating people of certain religious groups or certain races. That's really dumb for us to ever fall for that. Racism does exist, but it's really revved up by the media and governments, and it's not intelligent to have any racist tendency at all. To think that somebody is good or bad because of what skin color they have or what country they come from or anything, it's really dumb to fall for that. We should not do that. And so anyway, the media is busy already today in saying that this murder is the work of a white supremacist male conservative, even though he did identify himself in the manifesto that he wrote as an eco-fascist, meaning that he wants to save the world and help the environment at the point of a gun, and he admires communist China as his most ideal country and government. And with respect to getting people really upset and maybe wanting to have counteractive violence against the people in the religion that he talked about were invading countries, it's not their fault. They're being used as pawns by the UN and other nefarious organizations. And the fact that somebody's born into a religion that is being used to invade countries and whose scriptures say you should kill everybody that doesn't agree with the religion, which they do. I've read the 3 scriptures of that particular religion. That doesn't mean you need to hate anybody who's in it, because if you were born into that religion, you would have the same dilemma, the same social group, supporting the idea of maintaining your belief system. And there's just no point in hating anybody, is what it comes down to. And if you do, you're adding to the problem, even if you think that it's justified. People who are hating other people always say it's justified, and it's always stupid. So my suggestion is we drop it completely and look at things as they actually are. I guess, as you're aware, the mainstream media's job is to promote hate and division that are supposed to lead up to world tyranny and destruction of all life on the planet. Not everybody realizes that's the end game. They think maybe it's just control, Agenda 21 stuff, or some think that it's population reduction, but I spent decades digging into this stuff. And now, as an old person who's already gone through all that, I can tell you clearly that the end game, as far as I can see it, is destruction of life on this planet. And they want us to be stupid enough to go along with it and play into it and waste all our time and energy hating each other and promoting violence and chaos just like what they want. And my suggestion is we don't do that. If we do, we're just helping what they want to come true. And it looks on the surface like violence and hatred and, violent warfare, preemptive warfare, and things like that are stronger. And there's a lot of examples in world history that appear to prove that. But in actuality, love is a lot stronger. And the thing is that to get the full strength and power of that, you can't just memorize some things to say. You've got to do some serious work on yourself. Get back to full consciousness, which we don't even remember what that is, but it's still there. And I'm interested in solutions locally and worldwide, and for you personally. And I don't see any point in just going through all these dark things happening in the world, all the bad events in the news, things like that, without taking a look at solutions. Because what's the point? I mean, otherwise you just feel despair, and then your energy falls apart, and you're not helping the situation. So the way I see it, if we could open up the consciousness that we used to have, then eventually we see people of all religions and nationalities and countries as just not their physical appearance, not the costume they're wearing, which is these physical bodies, but pure spirit, whatever you call it. The words and the beliefs totally don't matter. It's what the reality is that matters. So we're wearing physical costumes of different types, but as soon as you start thinking that's who you are, and that you have to be suspicious of and hate people who have different appearing costumes, we get hypnotized into fighting over the differences. And the fake programming, it's just so heavy and deep, but it's not real. And it never was. And it never was who we were. And the global rulers behind all these agendas of different kinds that are obviously destructive, the main theme that goes behind all of them, which I've found anyway, keep you unconscious, keep you identifying with some little limited personal identity that you can use to fight other people about who have different ones. And they just laugh at us falling for that. So I think that the fate of the world and life on our planet in the future comes down really to the current situation of malicious rulers controlling billions of us under their power, and with the programming that I was just mentioning as their primary weapon. I mean, they have amazing physical and chemical and nuclear and frequency weapons, of course, but the programming is the strongest. Because if they use that well, they don't even have to do anything. We'll kill ourselves, and that's kind of what they're after. So if we shake the programming off, I think that even this late in the game, it's still possible to heal everything and leave some kind of a beautiful world for the kids and future generation to be born into, which I think is kind of our responsibility since we're here now. And the very top rulers of the world know about this, and they know that that's their biggest fear, that we would ever wake up and just shake off the stupid programming and realize, whoa, we're not even physical beings. We're just in this environment for a while, and we're something much deeper, and we don't really have anything to hate each other about at all. I mean, just the opposite. And all the efforts of the ruling tyrants have this common theme that keep us in fear and hatred and division with no real experience of who we are until they finish their agenda and destroy life on this place. And I don't think that we should let them, actually. I think that's not a good idea. So it's really important to them to destroy the U.S. along this track that they're going step by step, because America was founded on the idea of individual freedom and free markets, national sovereignty. And by the way, they talk about a lot of the programmed people who hate the U.S. and are living in it or trying to get into it so they can destroy it. They think capitalism is some evil thing from the devil or something, but I've heard Michael Moore and others talk about that. That's not true. And besides, free market capitalism, I don't think we've ever seen it in America. It was the idea in the beginning, and it's something that we could accomplish. But special deals between the government agencies and corrupt, toxic corporations like the biotech corporations and the telecom corporations and the toxic ag and medical corporations. That's not anything close to free market capitalism. Free market capitalism just means you can use your own creativity to make your living however you would like to. And as long as you're not going out and intentionally hurting others, freedom is the theme. And the country was founded on the idea of national sovereignty and the Bill of Rights and Constitution and Declaration of Independence, the founding documents, and they were reflecting, they weren't giving anybody any rights. That's a complete misunderstanding, and it was not creating a democracy. The founders thought that was a terrible idea. They never wanted a democracy. Democracies, there's all kinds of quotes from the founders on how terrible democracy is and how they end violently, and yeah, just not a good idea. But if the founding documents of any country are written well, based on the freedom and respect of all the individuals there, and the fact that they are over the government, not vice versa, then all the rights that people have are the same all over the world. It's not just where they have a constitution. It's every person in the world, and they come from God, and they're unalienable. And what that means is, if you're born with those rights, with all your rights, governments can't take them away, and neither can criminal organizations like the UN or the WHO or the WTO or any of these, like what would have been the TPP management and supranational agencies like that. They can't take away any of your rights. And of course, countries and agencies all over the world are doing that now, but they're not really entitled to do that. And that's what America was founded on acknowledging. Obviously, the country would protect its borders, and one of the main jobs and mandates of the government of any country is not to just let people invade and run across the borders. That's called the death of the country. And if there are no effective borders, there's no country. Obviously, I mean, this is not a partisan issue. It's just really obvious. So America has to be destroyed as far as the global rulers are concerned, because these principles can't allow to be known worldwide or even to the Americans. For example, unalienable rights from God, they can't be taken away in emergencies either. They can just never be taken away. Otherwise, you could just declare an emergency, which is what the U.S. government has done for decades, and say, well, all these rights are canceled. And what the founding document said was that you can't do that. Emergencies or not, doesn't matter. They can't be taken away, and you can't use little tricks like calling things hate speech to eliminate free speech. You can't do that either. Not just in America, you really can't do it anywhere. And yeah, they're doing it, and they're doing it all over the world now. But it's against primary law and has to be fixed. So the idea of how America was founded that make people want to come, even now when it's such a mess, to America compared to most of the rest of the world, is that the idea was that you could live and speak and think and act any way you want, as long as you don't trespass on the rights of other people and intentionally hurt them or, do damage like that. Otherwise, you just have your own life, and government is not supposed to bother you, or corporations aren't either. Now, harming others, I need to make one slight note with that, because obviously, and people may ask about this, self-defense is an exception. It's one of those inalienable rights from God, and it's reflected in the Second Amendment in the U.S., but it's not given by the Second Amendment. The idea of the founders was that if the Second Amendment was never thought of, you would still have an unalienable right to defend yourself, even against a corrupt government or against private gangs or against agencies, or if there's a religion that believes you have to be killed because you're not a member of it, which one of the big religions actually is acting on right now. You have the ability and the right to defend yourself, but not preemptive violence. You can't go out like, what is it, pre-crime idea and say, well, this person was thinking of attacking me, and so I have to attack first. You can't do that. But self-defense or defense of your country, that's normal. Anyway, those are some of the reasons why America is a primary target right now, not just by the United Nations, which obviously wants to destroy all sovereign countries, and international gangs, of course, are interested in doing that. And the religion I mentioned, the people who really follow the scriptures of it, they are mandated by the founder of their religion to invade and overtake and just flood all the other countries and bring them back to the one true belief, which happens to be theirs, and kill everybody who doesn't convert. That's a pretty insane idea, and it's not the fault of the people that are born into the religion. Hating them is completely ridiculous. It's the belief system, whether it's that one or any other, that says you have to kill everybody that doesn't agree with you. Humans need to become smart enough so they do not fall for stuff like that. And that starts with you and me and everybody individually, because what you make of yourself has a deep impact on everybody else, maybe more than some of us realize. Anyway, that's why America is a primary target. Major media, mainstream media, and education, so-called education, and programmed entertainment, and fake science that we have now, which is really, those things are all enemies of the people. It's twisted, when it's reported by the mainstream media itself, that, oh, this terrible president says he doesn't want any media. That's not what he said at all. He said when media is in collusion and it's out to destroy the country, then it's an enemy of the people, which is exactly what's happening in America, Europe, the UK, and most of the world now, actually. So the physical assaults against all of us are also enemies of the people. The ones that you know about, we've talked about them many times. Geoengineering is right up at the top of the list. I mean, that's the planes in the sky that have the white trails behind them. Those are not ice crystals. Okay, I know the National Weather Service, which I've talked to more than once on this, has to tell you, yes, it's very condescendingly, of course, just ice crystals, right? When atmospheric conditions are a certain way, you have these long streams out behind the plane that are white from the ground. And I said, well, what about the last time I was calling up one of these guys? I said, what about when they spread out over hours and become overcast over the whole sky? And he said, oh yeah, that's normal too. That's just, you're not even a scientist. And actually I am. But he said, you're not even a scientist and you don't understand these things. But in simple terms that you can understand, when the atmospheric conditions are a certain way, you have ice crystals that come out behind the plane. That's complete nonsense. And it hasn't been the case for a long, long time. Anyway, that is man-made climate change, because they're spraying toxic metals and biological and chemical agents over your head almost every day. And they're doing that in combination with some frequency weapons like HARP systems and other NextRed systems and things like that will change weather and climate patterns for real. And so, in a way, the people who believe in man-made climate change, they're right. And I don't mean the climate change like it changes every day, that's normal. I'm talking about total climate disruption. Those guys are right. But it's not because you won't turn down your air conditioner. It's because the planes are up there spraying huge amounts of toxic material, blocking out sunlight to the point where I think it's like 22, 23, 24% less sun radiation, which you need to be alive. 22% or more or less of it is reaching the Earth's surface. It's amazing we're still alive with that kind of disruption. It's not just that it's a degree colder or warmer. It's like major disruption. And part of the reason, it's complex, but part of the reason they do that is to prove that this nefarious, ominous boogeyman called climate change is actually real. And they can also point to things like the unnatural fires in California where they've dumped explosive metal dust over those trees for decades and then they ignite it. Obvious use of microwave weapons, I think, because normally you don't have a house burn down and the fire stop right on a certain line in a rectangular shape and the plants and plastic on the ground and stuff is not even hot and the house is vaporized. That's not a normal fire. And they did that in California many times and some other places too. And then they can say, well, see, climate change is so bad that just like the Green New Deal people are saying now that the world's going to be over in 11 or I think it was 12 years. Now it's 11 years. And they're training kids to be panicked about that too. And we'll get into that. Anyway, these are physical assaults. Chemical farming is another one. This is fake science that Justus von Liebig, the chemist in Germany when it started, was really into. And he said, wow, this is great. Instead of taking care of the soil, all you need is some synthetic chemicals, and you don't have to worry about that anyway. It's this siren song of convenience, right? That you don't have to be a real farmer anymore. You just ask the chemical rep what to dump on your property, and don't worry that it's polluting all the groundwater and poisoning the natural life forms on your land. It's what this expert scientist said, so it must be right to use it. That's a physical assault. It produces toxic food, and just completely ridiculous. Chemical farming is a real weapon against the people of any country. Toxic medicine is the same way, thinking that, forget the Hippocratic Oath, which used to be taken by the people who became doctors and other parts of the medical profession that would say, first, do no harm. Well, wait a minute. If you don't do any harm, you can't give poison and call it medicine and tell everybody to eat it. And then when it makes them even sicker, then don't worry because you can cut their organs out. That's not good medicine, you guys. Okay, I know that seems really radical, but it should be super obvious. So chemical farming, toxic medicine, any kind of dirty technology is an assault against the world and the people. And they're not necessary. They're a better alternative. Intentionally dumping chlorine and fluoride, especially fluoride in the public water systems, that's mass murder as far as I'm concerned. And it, besides causing bone cancer and things like that are actually acknowledged in the mainstream science journals, maybe by mistake, I don't know. They also lower IQ, and it has all kinds of other nasty effects. As the same thing with the, again, convenience communication technologies that use frequencies starting with 1G and 2G and 3G and 4G, and now about to have 5G, which will be much more damaging than the ones before. And I think the president has even said, oh, this is great, we should have 6G, forget 5. And same with the Internet of Things, where they put sensors and transmitters and receivers on every item, living and non-living in the whole world, as Rosa Koire has explained. This is really not okay to do. All aspects of Agenda 21, they work together for this overall agenda of destruction. Then you can get, on the health side into dead and toxic food from the processed food industry. Everybody thinks that's so wonderful, and they've got the ability to make these synthetic foods that are just immediately available. A lot of them, you don't even need anything natural. This is not as wonderful as it seems. It's directly related to all the degenerative diseases. And I know you're not supposed to talk about that on public platforms, but if we totally shut up, then nobody gets to know any of this stuff. Most of the major candidates I can see that are running for office in America are serving the powers that plan to destroy the country. And so are most of the biggest corporations and the banks and the government agencies. They're all kind of in collusion, but they've got different levels of motivation in most of those levels. They're after money and power. And some of the lower levels that are populated by people who have been through the educational system, which is another assault against humanity. they actually may think that they're doing good for the country. And lately, this thing, it's funny that the global rulers take things that are true and they just twist them enough to turn into something that's totally destructive. The Green New Deal that's getting a lot of support on the Democratic side, and I suspect that it's going to get some support on the Republican side too in America and the counterpart parties in other countries, wherever you are in the world, because most of all the parties are totally corrupted. And I know in America, where we're located, the Republicans act like they are adversaries to the Democrats, but really they all work together. And it's often a version of good cop, bad cop type thing. So the Green New Deal, this is supported by Organic Consumers Association, who does a lot of great work and have helped to get rid of or to support the lawsuits against Roundup and expose Ben & Jerry's having glyphosate in their ice cream, and a lot of really good work that they do, because any food at this point that you find that's not organic or better is really not safe to eat. I mean, that's what you're not supposed to realize. Yeah, it might be a little cheaper, and but if you walk into a Whole Foods or a natural food store where they sell conventional food and they sell organic food, that's mislabeled. Conventional is not conventional, it's poison. And when you see a sign in a store like that that says organic food and conventional food, the conventional sign says poison. Just read it like that and see if it's worth 10% less money. I would say it's not intelligent to buy it ever. And I know I'm not saying that as a rich person at all. Sitting here in a $5 studio, I'm not coming from that point of view. It's if I didn't have enough money for organic food, I just would not eat, or I'd eat less. And it really is a lot better idea. And there are organic foods that don't cost that much anyway. And if you're creative, you realize the difference, then you take the effort to do that. But I'm getting off track. I wanted to say a few things before we're over here, and our time's already more than half gone. But the Green New Deal, I think, is a great example of a plan to destroy America using the appeal of those who think very superficially and brainwashing victims of the media and the universities. There was an amazing new video that came out this week by a guy calling himself Mr. Reagan, like Ronald Reagan, And I posted it on Lost Arts Radio with Doug, and it should be up there now. If you get time to look at it, I highly recommend it. If you're interested in knowing where the Green New Deal came from, which I think would be a good idea to know, and where Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez came from, you probably thought she was this idealistic candidate who decided to run for office and, like she says, at least try to save the world and do all these good things. No, that's not what happened. She was a bartender, and she's talked about that herself. And I think it was her brother who heard about a casting call by this group called what were they called? Justice Democrats. And they were putting out a casting call for thousands of people to come in and see if they would look like the kind of charismatic figure that would be a good political hero. And some of the applicants won. It's like trying out for a movie or something like that, when you're an actor or an actress. And Ocasio-Cortez was one of the best actresses, not a professional actress, a professional bartender, but she had the qualities of a great actress and a charismatic figure. And she was one of the winners. This really happened. And this video documents it very well. I really think it would be good to look at it. It's by Mr. Reagan, Reagan, and it's something about the real power behind Ocasio-Cortez and other people like that. She went through the casting process. She was one of the winners. And then for the winners who are going to play not the role of somebody living on a farm or in a business or something, they're going to play the role of a politician, even though they know nothing about it. And they weren't even thinking of becoming those before. And this group's Justice Democrats funds and runs their campaigns, scripts the speeches, social media posts. They tell them everything to say, how to have a discussion, and stay by the notes, in other words. And then they put up the money and they get them elected. And this is a socialist group. Socialism is bad news, guys. It has nothing to do with right or left or anything. Socialism is code for a tyrannical government, like communism, fascism, any of the other flavors of tyranny that you might encounter. Socialism is one of those. And socialism is a popular word to use for tyranny because, it sounds really friendly and social and everything. It must be great, right? That's the level of intelligence that we've gotten to. That's about how deep we think of it. But no, it represents total control of all of your life. So AOC is just happens to be the best known of 7 of their candidates that won congressional positions in 2018. 3 of those were chosen through casting calls, and the others were endorsed after they started running. Ilhan Omar, by the way, is one of them, and she didn't win the casting call. Rashida, what's her full name? Tlaib, I think, is one of the ones that won the casting call. Ilhan Omar didn't. She was an actual person running for office, but she was funded and supported and put in by Justice Democrats. And their plans, they're connected with the guy who started the Young Turks, Cenk Uygur, I think is his name, and some other real brilliant political agents that are behind the whole thing. And their goal is to put hundreds or maybe 1,000 people in and replace Congress. That's the words they use. They want to replace Congress completely, make America a socialist country. After all, we need to catch up to Venezuela and North Korea, right? So those countries may look like failures for the average people who end up eating each other and starving, but they're not failures for the rulers who live in incredible luxury and get to control everybody else's lives. So I think it would be good not to fall for that. It's been done over and over again in history. But as I said, the goal of the Justice Democrats is, and justice sounds so great, right? And people don't think. They just say, how does the word feel? Justice, that sounds really good. And, Justice Democrats, they must be in favor of the average person. They want to replace Congress, and AOC is the figurehead of the Green New Deal, but she didn't write any of it. She didn't think of it. She was one of the 3 that succeeded at the casting call. Obviously doesn't know anything about politics or economics or the environment at all. Not anything about energy, banking. She's just an actress, and she's not the only one. And this organization wants to replace all of Congress with people in that situation. As I said, she wasn't involved in writing the Green New Deal. It was written for her by her staff, the Justice Democrats, in one weekend. And it is apparent, according to this guy, Mr. Reagan, and his documentation and sources, that she wasn't even in the room when it was written. It's totally not her idea. And she's not able to coherently talk about it when she goes off script. So what the Green New Deal represents, and I'm sorry to say these big organizations are supporting it and have fallen for it. Organic Consumers is one. Sunrise Movement and other ones like that are training little kids to be terrified that the world is going to end in 11 years, which, to be honest, it might, because all of these things are being intentionally used to destroy the ecosystem. The real energy and environmental policy in the U.S. and elsewhere is destroy the environment. Anything that's really good is going to be pushed to the sidelines. You saw that in the Gulf so-called oil spill, where people like Kevin Costner came up with bacteria that would eat the oil. And they said, no, we're going to buy all this poison from this chemical company called Corexit and just spray it not only all over the ocean just to hide the damage, but we're going to spray it over the land to poison the people too. We think that's the best idea. So that's the real environmental policy of American government and most of the world. It needs to be fixed if we want to keep surviving. Anyway, the Green New Deal and the Sunrise Organization and others are getting little kids to memorize their lines and then be used as weapons against the politicians and try to pressure them into supporting suicidal plan, which is the Green New Deal. This kind of tactic would never work on us if we were awake and conscious. So the thing is, how do we shake off the hypnosis and programming that makes us fall for the lies and divisions and hate each other and just do everything out of fear? The Green New Deal, by the way, before I answer that question, is some of it makes sense. I mean, the idea of poisoning the world is not intelligent. It's not brilliant. Okay, we should not be doing it. And I'm not saying we are doing it. It's the people that have special corporatist or fascist deals between government agencies and chosen toxic corporations. Those are suicidal for the planet, and it's not an accident. It's being done intentionally. So when you have toxic agriculture, toxic medicine, and medicine is involved in destroying the environment, remember, because when the drugs go through all of our bodies that the doctors get us hooked on, since most of them have become professional drug dealers now, they go through the system into the sewer system. They don't get neutralized. They go into the groundwater. And you can imagine what happens from there. It can be recycled right through your water system. And so these toxic industries in collusion with government are definitely destroying the planet's ecosystem. Green New Deal is correct about that. And they're correct about climate disruption. They're just not admitting that it's geoengineering that's doing it. And the part of it that's coming from dirty energy sources like coal and petroleum energy and certainly nuclear power, which was maliciously insane to ever use in the beginning, knowing that things like Fukushima were inevitable eventually. These are not partisan issues. It's not whether you're, oh, I'm an environmentalist, so I have to be against this stuff, or, oh, I'm a conservative, so I have to support the petroleum industry. That's really dumb. You know, I think one of the things, and about to be the answer of this question here, is that dropping the labels and forgetting these stupid things like left and right and what political party you're in, those are just distractions. And they make it impossible to think clearly. And some of the founders of the American country in the beginning were saying parties are a really bad idea. What possible benefit do you have out of a party except now you've got an organization that can control the candidates? You know, like they tried to get the current president to not be nominated by the Republican Party because they knew he was outside of the system. So they tried to change the rules at the last second so that he couldn't get in. That's part of the benefit of parties, right? They're completely crazy. I have not seen any benefit of any party yet at all. Because as soon as you've got a party, you've got a platform, right? And you've got this whole list of things that the candidates have to be for and against, or else they don't get the support of the party organization. It's another mechanism to keep people from seeing things clearly. So what I was trying to say about the Green New Deal before we run out of time, and I want to get into the answer of the question I asked, is that concern for the health of the ecosystem is 100% valid and legitimate. And concern about the stability of the climate is legitimate. The idea that we need better sources of energy and electric generation and things like that is legitimate. But that's as far as it goes. And then the rest of the story, as Paul Harvey would have said, is intentionally left out. And people like AOC probably have no idea what any of the story is. This is all coming from the handlers, and they want the important rest of the story left out. Well, some of the parts of the rest of the story, which would take much more than a couple minutes to go over, are that whatever system you've got has to be based on individual freedom. not the freedom to destroy the ecosystem, because that is suicidal for the planet. But within that caveat, you might say, of not trespassing on other people's rights or intentionally doing harm, you can live and think and say whatever you want, however you want. Censorship is not something that happens. It's completely counterproductive. You don't have laws against hate speech. That was used in the Soviet Union. It's used in many governments. They just make up a term like hate speech, and anything they don't want you to hear or know about becomes hate speech, right? Anything that disagrees with the rulers or is seen as a threat to them becomes hate speech. So you want absolute free speech for the people that you don't agree with, and everybody. It's the only way to do it. You have to have absolute guarantee of the right for self-protection, firearms ownership, not to go out and do crimes or preemptive violence or anything, but where you take away the people's rights to self-defense, like all those defenseless people in the mosque in New Zealand, there's a danger of everybody getting slaughtered, and that's not a good thing. It doesn't reduce crime at all. So if the Green New Deal was completed and they understood about the solutions for agriculture and energy and medicine and all the other things, and you would never, by the way, speaking of medicine, so many things I want to mention to you at the same time here in our limited minutes left. Single-payer healthcare is completely stupid and suicidal for any country that does it. And the reason is not because it's so wonderful that everybody has healthcare, but because who's defining the healthcare? The corrupt government in collusion with the toxic medical industry. So let's see, what would happen? What could possibly go wrong with that? Well, from their point of view, nothing. It's total control. But from our point of view, we end up with a kind of medicine that has chemotherapy and toxic drugs as the way to get healthy, and injections into people of these incredibly disgusting poisons and elements from killed aborted babies, and that gets injected into people, including newborn babies. And as soon as you get a single-payer health care, there will be no way to get out of what they call health care, and it'll be killing people like it is now, but much worse. Now at least there's just a little bit of a remnant of free choice in healthcare, not much, and they're trying to get rid of it. But if you have single-payer healthcare, there won't be any. And that's really not intelligent to want that. And it's just amazing how otherwise intelligent groups like Organic Consumers Association jumps into this and doesn't see anything wrong with it. No mention of the real source of climate change. No mention of the fact that solar and wind are not the ultimate green energy technologies that we want. There are far, far better ones. And you know that because the government has been killing the people that try to bring them out of hiding and out of reverse engineering and things. Look at the work of Dr. Stephen Greer if you're interested in this. But the energy technologies that are clean and free and don't even take normal inputs have been available for over 100 years. Really look at the work of Dr. Stephen Greer. It's quite interesting. And he's trying to set up a system, which he's got operating now, where inventors of these real advanced technologies, that some of them work on magnetism and other advanced zero-point energy systems that are real. He says if you can bring yours and demonstrate it, I think he's in Virginia at his farm, and other people can replicate it, they've got investors that will give you money for it, maybe not the billions you hoped for, but good money, and his system will suddenly expose it worldwide, open source, and it can't be stopped, and I think it's a good idea. No mention of that sort of thing, no awareness of it on the part of AOC or the Green New Deal people, and it's critically important. Solar and wind are not as efficient as they should be right now, and shutting down the petroleum industry by fiat when you don't have a good enough replacement, it's not intelligent, or at the top levels of the rulers, it is intelligent because they know it'll destroy the country. And so not a good thing. But if the Green New Deal had these other things added to it and it was fixed, it could be great. Similarly, they talk about trying to fix, what do they call it, economic inequality, which is not something to fix because people are going to have different levels of motivation of what to acquire. But leaving that aside for the moment, trying to fix poverty with higher minimum wages is, again, really crazy idea. I mean, it could be well motivated, but it's not informed. As long as you have the gigantic mammoth in the room, which is the Federal Reserve System, which is a bunch of people siphoning off the real wealth of the country and destroying the economic strength of it through a trick called inflation, which is printing money based on nothing, and fractional reserve banking. Unless you understand how that works, there is no system from the Green New Deal, the current president, or anybody else that is going to work economically unless that is addressed. And that was one of many things that Kennedy did to get himself killed, is he recognized that, what I just said, and he was in the process of eliminating the so-called Federal Reserve, which is not federal. It's not part of the government. It's, as Alan Greenspan said on video, it's an independent agency, meaning nobody can stop anything they do. It's completely un-American. It's mostly foreign-owned, and it's a big criminal organization. Anybody that is sincere about wanting to fix the economy needs to get rid of their country's central bank, which is a challenge, but it could be done. So talking fast now and trying to get through this, dropping the labels is a big first step, and thinking of how many labels we're carrying around, that give us tunnel vision and just want to fight with people who have other labels or other ideas, fighting to prove each other wrong. Those in the top positions of power are moving to systematically enslave and destroy us, laughing at us while we waste our time fighting. So what if we woke up and dropped the labels of the left and right and political parties and all that, and realized that all the primary issues in the world are not partisan. They're not a matter of labels at all. And people have common interests, not partisan, and common needs. And some of those are like freedom to live as we choose, as long as we're not going out to hurt other people. Good health, which requires the release of real health information currently being suppressed and censored in the U.S. and elsewhere. You've got to have real health information, real nutrition, which means that the food can't be being raised with toxic chemicals. That's got to be phased out with something much better brought in. Teach those companies how to make money without selling poison. I mean, nothing wrong with making money at all. People should make as much as they can, but do it by doing something useful and helpful to everybody. The food grown in the right way would become a super health food, and farm work for the people working out in the fields would become healthy again, like it used to be. People need clean air and water, and they've got to replace all kinds of toxic technology. Again, stop geoengineering. I'm talking at high speed now. Total true recycling is not a partisan issue. It's obviously that it's needed. Some of the conservative people think, getting rid of plastic residue is really stupid for these dumb liberals. No, it's just necessary, okay? The labels are making people not see clearly. Protection of the national borders should not be a partisan issue either, unless we live in a perfect world with a wonderful environment outside. You have to have national borders, and the president of the U.S. didn't have to go to Congress. That was terrible advice. He should have just taken the military and built his wall and manned it. That would have been the end of the problem. Also, real media, free speech, no hate speech laws, those are totally counterproductive. Protection from electronic frequency attack, which you're under right now. If you have Wi-Fi in your home or office, get rid of it. Hardwire everything. This is really important. Maybe we'll have time to talk about it at some point. Privacy, protection from Internet of Things, which the president thinks is great. Agenda 2030, government spying. Protection from government theft, illegal fees and regulations and taxes. None of these things are partisan at all. But the top positions of power in government and industry are already infiltrated with criminals. I don't know, regardless of whether they're breaking laws, they're criminals and people who are out to cause great harm to us. What's the solution? In 10 seconds. At least some critical mass of people, that means you, has to throw off the programming and all of the hypnosis, regain consciousness that we used to have a long time ago, a long time ago. And it's also the ruler's biggest fear that we might someday do this. So who has to do the work to fix the world situation? You and me and each one of us. So learn all you can, assess yourself, stop judging everybody else as your primary priority. Look at yourself, improve yourself, learn everything you can, assess your daily habits, improve them. And if you do that internally, get your health and energy back, learn the real health information to do that. Everything you do on the outside will be empowered. We've got a project going to do that. If you get interested, look at planetaryhealingclub.com. And that's access to the private aspect of our program where all this stuff is talked about fully. So donate to keep our work going if you want to help us. This is all being done, as a public service. So donate to our nonprofit on lostartsradio.com. We're set up now to take cryptocurrency. If you email me, I'll give you a code for that, richard@lostartsradio.com. Really appreciate it very much. Free videos are being posted on all the major platforms, but watch for brighteon.com. If we get censored, you can find us there and on lostartsradio.com. Sunday show, incredible guests, and trying to encourage you guys to do what you do even better. But look at the hidden key. Get your own health and energy and consciousness back. Look at our project, planetaryhealingclub.com. Remember the Sunday show. And for those of you already involved in the Planetary Healing Club meetings in 30 minutes. And thanks for giving me your time. I really appreciate it. And have a great week, and we'll see you next time.